Hey folks, what's going on? I am Scott Schertzen alongside Mr. Robert Manning, and joining us today, the principal from Wizard of Waverly Place. Big fan of Galaxy Quest, so I have to mention that one at some point. He was the guy in the beginning of that Alan Rickman ripped the autograph from in the beginning. Below with us today, Mr. Bill Chott. Sir, how the heck are you?
I'm doing good. It's a beautiful day here in Los Angeles.
Nice, nice. Yeah, what's the weather like over there so far?
Oh God, I didn't even take a look at the temperature. This time of year you almost don't need to, except for the fact that in June we have something called June gloom,
Yes.
that it gets cloudy and cloudy and cloudy, and then you get depressive, and then all of a sudden it reminds you that it's summertime again. And then yeah. But today has just been the last couple days have just been glorious.
Brilliant, brilliant. So yeah, congratulations on the career, by the way. You've been fantastic for literally decades.
Thank you.
Wizards of Waverly Place, obviously best known as in a lot of ways, like see the results.
Yeah.
Obviously Selena Gomez got her start with that, and obviously I think she's had a decent career since then, a little
She's
bit.
done all right.
Yeah,
She's
she's
done all right.
managed, she's been able to get through okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, what basically how are things going for you these days? What's new and exciting? And yeah, roll.
Things are going well. I just worked on two different indie films.
Nice.
One is called Robot Dracula.
Oh, is that the Balsamo pick?
Yes, it
I know,
is.
I
It's
know
James
James Balsamo.
Balsamo's work.
He's interviewed people with me.
Okay, good. Yeah. Malcolm McDowell plays Robot Dracula.
Mhm.
Bruce Dern is the Van Helsing character who's called Van Helsing,
Yes.
and he has a son named Dan Helsing. I play Dr. Herman Nerman, who is he's kind of like if you remember Q from James Bond, who gives them all the
Yes.
weapons.
Hmm.
I give the vampire hunters the weapons that they need to use, and in particular, James, his
God, that's
character,
so funny.
Tony, I believe.
That is so funny because I've known James for years. So
Yeah,
you said
and I
you said it
just
was
just shot a day on an indie feature called Bipartisan,
okay.
which kind of plays around with identity politics and politics in Los Angeles, and probably pretty much as an allegory for politics all over the nation.
Yeah, politics are one of those things that basically everybody has an opinion one way or the other, and
Yeah.
seldom peaceful and at the same time. So
Yeah, and this movie is not about your average politics. It's about a guy who gets fired, and then he decides to to create a whole political campaign around the fact that he was fired. So,
okay,
and
okay,
I play his boss.
okay. You do have that kind of look there.
I
You,
do have a boss slash
yeah,
authoritarian look about me.
you know. But Rob, how you doing, man? You're grinning ear to ear right now, man. Go,
Yes.
please, please, please.
I'm
Which
doing
is
great.
isn't
I
he
just
isn't he always grinning like
Oh
that?
my God, yes.
I've never seen him without that smile on his face.
You know.
I'm doing great. I'm just happy that this is happening. It's all because of TikTok. Why me and Bill originally got to meet.
True.
And yeah, because one day I was on set and we were waiting, and I said, "Let me jump on TikTok," and it showed Bill on, and they have a thing where you can refresh, and I was able to invite Bill. Bill accepted it, and then we got talking. He gave me some movie advice, and then I told him, "Hey, Bill, I got to go back to," because they're like, "Hey, we're all going," and we've been friends ever since.
And congratulations on that, by the way. 145,000 followers on TikTok.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, that's really impressive on that too. It's not even the
And
things that you did either.
And I gotta say, as a fan of Wizards of Waverly Place, which always gotta love Bill's character, him yelling at Alex, aka Selena Gomez. Yeah, no. And I know you probably still haven't heard, but I'm hoping you get to come back for the whatever we want to call it, the reboot or the sequel to the
The
original
sequel. I
show.
think I think the best way to refer to it is a sequel at this point.
Sequel.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I would love to be a part of it. I reached out to the exec producer and let him know that I'm excited about the project. So, and he said they're hoping to have as many people as they can back from the original. So,
Nice.
I
Nice.
mean,
I'd love to be a part of it in any way possible.
it would make sense if you're yelling at LaRusso's kids.
Exactly. I'm figuring
Yelling at a
the
brand
kids
new
need
generation.
somebody to yell at them.
Right. And it'd be kind of cool to see, like, like the Russos when they were kids, so it'd be almost like kind of they get targeted because they're like, I know your parents.
Yes.
Don't try that. But I do want to start off with a quick question. What inspired you to be an actor?
Wow. I think I loved the limelight since I was a kid. I think the first time I was on a television screen was when they were first starting to come out with, video cameras for home use and school
Mhm.
use and things like that. And in our gym class, they were filming kids just walking on the balance beam or whatever. And I was kept on sticking my head in frame, even though I wasn't the kid on the balance beam. And they were like, "You got to get out of there." And I would do that with home movies. I would, if you look at any old home movies, every time I see, back then when you had like an old 8mm camera, there
Mhm.
were these giant floodlights. And I would see those lights and I would find my light and I would get right on screen, right on camera. I started doing magic at the age of 5 because I knew people would watch you if you said, "Hey, you want to see a magic trick?" And so I started doing magic and doing it in um, talent shows and show and tell and anything like that. And so magic was kind of like my first entryway into performing. And then the first time I was on TV was a kids game show in St. Louis called DB's Delight, and there was a puppet who was the host, named DB. And a local disc jockey would be like the host of the show, but DB would be like reading the questions to the kids and things like that. That was always very fun. And so that was the first time I was ever on TV as a child, on a game show, and I knew I was like, oh, I get to be on TV. And it was the thing I really felt called to do and felt qualified to do. Later on, I became a bank teller, as a job to put myself through college. But I knew after college that I wanted to go out and become an actor. Matter of fact, I didn't want to go to college at first. I wanted to go straight to Chicago to study at the Second City, where all of my comedy legends came out of. At the time, my dad let us stay up late for Saturday Night Live and all those shows. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And my dad said, "Ho, ho, ho, they don't just hire people. You have to have like a good education. You need to have a full reference level to be an improviser." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." So I went to college, and then right after that, I spent a year doing improv in St. Louis, and then moved to Chicago and started studying there, and that's where I found my first agent. And I really haven't looked back.
So
That's when
did
I knew
you
I wanted to be an actor, and that's where I got my first full-time job, which only lasted about 6 weeks, the Dana Carvey show. But they
remember the
found me
Dana
for
Carvey show? Yes.
Second City.
Do you, I mean, in this case here, you mentioned your father and everything. Did you get support from them, or was it a little bit of like, why is he going down this path?
My parents have always been incredibly supportive of me.
Nice.
Um, my mom is, coming up on Mother's Day, so just a shout out to my mom if she sees this in time for Mother's Day. Has always been the most supportive. At the same time, when she knew I was having a rough go of it when I first moved out here to Los Angeles, she was like, "You can always move back here if you need to." And I was like, "Well, thank you." I was kind of insulted at the time, but now that I realize it, that's a lot for a parent to tell their child at like 26, 27, you can move back home, you
Mhm.
know. But she's always been very supportive. Actually, her father, my grandfather, was an actor.
Mhm.
After he retired from being a union welder, he went into acting and did local film and television and stage work, and he was like the local Santa Claus. So everywhere that you saw Santa Claus, it was like the high dollar Santa Claus. And if it wasn't, Grandpa would be like, "Look at that darn fool! He doesn't look like Santa Claus like me." And my father himself wanted to be an actor, kind of, when he was younger. He later became a writer. Um, but I think he saw a chance for me to make a living at being an actor, and even if it wasn't possible to make a living, he knew that's what I wanted to do, and he
Mhm.
saw me. Actually, he saw me in my first play in grade school. I think I was in the 5th grade. I was in a play called The Pale Pink Dragon,
Hmm.
where I played the king. And afterwards, that first night of the play, he came up to me and said, "Hey, I had never really pushed you in that direction because I know this is a crappy business."
Mhm.
He witnessed you know, he would mostly work with union actors and announcers and everything that would record the things for the corporate work that he did. He would do industrials. And he was like, I know it's a crappy business, but I'm not going to hold you back. You were great tonight. And I was like, all right. And they truly were supportive in every way.
Nice. That makes it a lot easier, you
It
know.
really does. I can't imagine what it's like for some people who, you know, you hear their families, you know,
Mhm.
telling them they're crazy for doing it or they should take the safe road or whatever. I was incredibly blessed to have supportive family. Like
Yeah.
everybody in my family. My brother has always been incredibly supportive and he gives me funny ideas. And my sister, we kind of joke around and refer to her as my publicist because when
Nice.
I go
Okay.
back home to St. Louis, she sets up interviews for me and gets people out to my shows. And she even organized when the movie The Ringer came out.
Mhm.
I played the character Thomas in The Ringer, and she set up like a local premiere in St. Louis. She, you know, got the word out way in advance, and everybody bought tickets, and we had I was signing posters and everything out front, and we had a big celebration dinner and everything afterwards. So every one of my family members, including all my aunts and uncles, have been incredible. I couldn't have made it without knowing that everybody back there in St. Louis had my back.
In my case, and I'll turn this over to Rob in a second, when I was a financial advisor, my parents kind of fought it a little bit, believe it or not, you know, very, very straight laced. And then when I made the career shift into, you know, the entertainment world outside of New York, it didn't matter what it was. If I showed up as a cop on Blue Bloods for 2 seconds doing a cross, they would sit there and they'd record it basically on the phone, put it on a DVD. There were pictures of me on the refrigerator, which, you know, I'm trying to play it cool like a 35-year-old guy. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the fridge and just going, because there's all these pictures of me doing all this kind of stuff. It
Yep,
makes it so much easier. My God, you have to
it
have that kind of
does.
support. That's why I asked that. Because,
Yeah,
like I said, a lot of times you get parents who are a lot more straight laced because you had the bank teller job, which is a good job in this case here, you
yeah.
know, and then you switched into being an actor, you know,
Yeah.
and
But I don't think anybody ever, knowing me from childhood, I don't think anybody expected me to stay in banking. They knew that was my way to pay my way through college. And then when I moved out to Chicago, I applied for a bank teller job just because that was the only
Mhm.
job that I had had experience at, and I got that. So,
So
yeah.
you didn't get that straight out of central casting.
Uh, not in that case, no.
So, Rob, go ahead if you want. So,
I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, it does help having supporting parents. My mom has always been supportive and always told me to follow my dreams. So that's why I am getting into acting because I've always wanted to be an actor since I was in the 8th grade. I saw one of my friends, one of my best friends to this day. He was in Sound of Music,
hmm.
and I was like, you know what? I think I could do that too. And then the next year, I was in Wizard of Oz and Willy Wonka, and got to be small parts. But I always was like the funny small parts because I got to
Hmm.
be in Wizard of Oz. I got to be the one that actually takes Toto and runs off with him. I got to be a tree that throws apples at Dorothy, and then
Yeah.
I
You didn't hit her.
in
You didn't
Willy
hit her with
Wonka, I
it,
got
okay.
what?
You didn't hit her with an apple because that would hurt like heck.
They were plastic apples.
Yeah.
Still might
Okay.
hurt though.
And then in Willy Wonka, I got to be Grandpa George, the one that stays in bed, not
Mhm.
the one that is it Grandpa.
Yeah, Grandpa Joe is the one that
Grandpa
basically.
Joe is the one that was faking it all along.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Wait, he is
he's
one of
the yeah.
he's one of the
So
most hated
yeah,
characters now,
There
and
are a
what
lot of
got me
people that
that
are not about to
originally,
forgive Grandpa Joe.
dude.
originally I was supposed to just be an understudy, but then I was like, one day in class, I was like, "Did you hear that?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're Grandpa George." I was like, "Yes."
In your case with your career, obviously you've had decades of experience. You know, you've seen the highs, the lows, the best and the worst in every aspect of it. In your opinion, what was like one of the coolest days you've ever had on set, or possibly one of the coolest directors that just knew what they wanted and got it done?
Wow. I loved, man, the two things that I'm known for the most are the things that I've loved the
Hmm.
most. Working on Wizards of Waverly Place,
Hmm.
such a supportive environment, and a lot of that was Peter Murrieta, who
Hmm.
was also came up through Second City, and he was the exec producer on the show. And you know, everybody on that show was incredibly supportive, but he would always be there, you know, it was an extra boost to have him around. And then when I worked on the movie The Ringer,
Mhm.
Barry Blaustein, who directed the film, put his heart and soul into the making of the film and getting it made and meeting with all the Special Olympians and meeting
Mhm.
with the Special Olympics. And then Pete and Bobby Farrelly producing the
Okay.
film got heavily involved. They got more involved than a lot of producers do. A lot of times a producer's just a name on a film, but they saw how much that film meant to a lot of people, and they got very involved in it. And all of them told us on day one of the film, don't hold back on improv
Mhm.
because I don't want to hear later that you said, oh, you know what I was thinking about doing? They said if it doesn't work, it'll wind up on the cutting room floor, and that's
Mhm.
fine, but throw it out there. And one of the more famous lines from The Ringer that Jeffrey Arend says about the ice cream was
Mhm.
improvised.
Okay.
Nobody was expecting it. And then Pete Farrelly
Work.
screamed really loud. He was like, damn it. And everybody was like, uh-oh, did they get
Mhm.
upset because, he dropped an F-bomb on set, or what was the problem? And he goes, everybody behind the camera was laughing. We're going to have to shoot it again. He was mad at the crew for laughing when it happened. And it's got to be tough to work on a crew. And, the crew is really what makes the film happen. It doesn't happen with the support of everybody behind the scenes. And everybody needs to be there. Wardrobe needs to be there to make sure that your wardrobe isn't wrinkled or covered in lint, and makeup needs to be there for the last touch-ups and everything. And then, the film crew, lighting crew, all those people need to be there, but they're also not trained in repressing emotions. And it was tough for them. It has to be tough for them working on a really funny comedy to not crack up when an unexpected moment like that comes along.
Only Murders in the Building has that problem right now.
Oh, I'm sure.
Speaking of Selena Gomez, I mean, I've stood in a few times on there, and yeah,
Uh,
just Steve Martin and Martin Short just doing what they want.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
two of the undoubtedly funniest performers that we've been blessed to ever have on screen, and they have such a great rapport with one
Mhm.
another. Nothing's going to hold them back. They're willing to crack a joke, even if it's going to put the production behind.
Yeah, because in this case here, they're so powerful anyway. The show is obviously rated, well
Oh
received amongst many, many different age groups, and honestly, just it's a lot of fun.
yeah,
I think the only people that really hate it is the people outside the apartment building where they're constantly filming the street.
that
Because you see, I
that
don't know if
must
you
be
guys have the
great.
Haddad's trucks, because we get the Haddad's trucks in New York and New Jersey,
Yeah,
and yeah, they are constantly parked in one specific spot for that show all the time. So the neighbors probably hate
yeah.
it. So, Rob, hang
So one of
on.
my other shows that I like you in is Curious George. How was it being
Mhm.
in that?
That was great. I the character of the doorman, the
Mhm.
hello George, hello man in the yellow hat, was a character that I had done since I was like a kid, because it reminded me of like kid voices in the 40s. I would
Mhm.
listen to like the Jack Benny program and Abbott and Costello, and so I kind of cultivated that character, that voice. And so when I auditioned, the voice doesn't look much like the stature of the guy. He's this
Mhm.
broad-chested, really tall guy. Um, but he looked so retro. And so I tried out that voice as one of the many options that I offered them, and they were like, "Yeah, let's go with that." And then on set, they had me start doing the voice for Hundley the dog.
Mhm.
So I was hired to do the voice of the doorman,
Mhm.
and then on set they were like, "Hey, can you do the voice of Hundley the dog?" And I
Mhm.
was like, "Sure." And so I kind of listened to a little bit to how a dachshund sounds and came out. And by the way, I had at the time my former wife was babysitting
Mhm.
two dachshunds,
Okay.
Bonnie and Clyde,
Mhm.
and they would run back and forth on the back of the couch,
Mhm. Up
back
top,
and
right
forth
behind your neck.
across one another, and they'd be like go around one another really quickly. And that was kind of how they would bark. And so I just basically used that voice for Hundley
Hmm.
from two dogs that I already knew and loved. And then of course there were some other voices I think that I did from time to time where they need like an extra voice here or there.
Mhm.
But it was so fun meeting so many of those voiceover icons that I had
Mhm.
been listening to for years, especially like, Frank Welker, I
Oh
had been
yeah.
listening to from since a kid at Scooby Doo, but
Yeah,
Rob and Jeff and everybody, involved in
and
the
it,
production.
and Greg Delilah has had an excellent career too. That played Emily Elizabeth.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
I got a chance to work with someone, and they, unlike a lot of other voiceover projects, they had us all in the same room.
They did.
wow.
Okay.
So yeah, with the exception of the narrator,
Hmm.
who's played by Bill,
Shots? No.
Yeah. I'm gonna.
not not me, Bill Bill Macy.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah.
With the exception of the narrator,
Hmm.
played by Bill Macy, everybody was in the room talking on the mics and interacting with one another, and it was so great.
Which is funny
Awesome.
because nowadays, obviously, it's a lot of it's done remotely, like say through Source Connect. So you
Yeah,
guys may not necessarily see each other. Sometimes actually they don't even have you guys record at the same time. Sometimes it is. Otherwise, you just throw in a bunch of dialogue and then just pick it up later a little bit. It loses a little bit of that personal touch. So the fact that you
yeah,
guys were in the room together, obviously Jim Cummings, Rob Paulson, especially Rob Paulson, all these guys who have decades of experience being around and just letting them roll.
yeah,
I mean, I gotta wonder how much ad lib was involved with something like that.
yeah. People played around on there all the time. I don't think I did much
Mhm.
improvisation because that was my first really big
Fair.
voiceover job. I had done the Ambiguously Gay Duo,
Yes, we can
and
talk about that.
that I felt comfortable playing around with, Colbert and Carell and Robert Smigel. But yeah, I was I was a little bit more than intimidated there on my first big series.
That makes sense.
Hey,
Yeah,
hey, listen, Rob Paulson was the guy in Spaceballs, that nobody
yeah,
remembers was in Spaceballs. He's chill. He's okay. He's chatted with him. So, um,
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, in this case here, looking at the career that you've had, I have to address Galaxy Quest. I
yes.
mean, there are certain movies that to me are just like perfect films, and Galaxy Quest is one of them. To the point that I've read the comic sequel. Yes, which takes place 5 years later.
I
Um,
didn't even know that existed.
yeah, small hint on this. Guy Fleegman actually gets his own spin-off show, which pisses off the rest of the cast, starting right off the bat with that.
Well
Uh,
overdue.
yes, but in this case, you had the scene opposite Alan Rickman. You walked in there, by the Sons of War event, and he just snatches this thing right out of your hand. And again, one of the perfect films that I remember as a kid.
Mm.
And if you got a quick minute, talk about that because there's only one scene, one day, but it still sits in so many people's memories.
It was more than one day though.
Really?
We had spent, I think, 3 days shooting that
Yeah. Okay.
because we had to get all the coverage,
Okay.
and it
Yeah.
was
Okay.
there. Maybe
That's
it was
fair.
2 days. Maybe history is making me think it was 3 days, but it was at least 2 days
Hmm.
because they shot it at the Hollywood Palladium,
Hmm.
and it's a convention scene, so they needed to make sure that everything matched and everything was there. And I think they needed to get a lot of coverage from all the different angles. And if somebody else was stepping in, one of us would have to be stepping out.
Hmm.
And and there's great people in the movie that like made it on screen but didn't get a chance. Like their lines kind of got cut. Like Greg Binkley is
Okay.
in that movie too. That's where I met him for the
Hmm.
first time. And it was a lot of time on set, and it was, it had an old air conditioning, system in the building,
Oh.
one of those. So they'd have to shut down the air
Hmm.
conditioning, and everybody crowded into this convention room with all the hot lights.
Oh
They had,
no.
for the first time, what I ever saw, and now I see it on sets all the time, these giant balloons,
Hmm.
that are about the size of like 3 or 4 people floating in the air with all the
Moonlights. Yeah.
lights. So this, blasting all this light, no air conditioning on. They had a giant hose with only an opening about that big that they would run in there, and then they'd turn that on with a generator between shots. Tim Allen
Hmm.
would like entertain the crowd. He would just do crowd work and do stand up with a wireless mic there in between takes, and he kind of kept the spirit going, between
Nice.
downtimes. But that was so fun to do.
Go ahead, bud.
How was Rickman in real life?
Yes.
I didn't really talk that much to Rickman. People ask me this all the time. And he was very, very nice and very generous with this guy who was trying to pitch a screenplay to him as an extra, but he had already been in so many shots that they couldn't remove him.
BG aren't supposed
So
to talk to principal,
you're not supposed to.
especially that high on the call sheet.
Yeah, and so most of the time that I was there, I hadn't said my line to him, so he probably wasn't even sure if I was the guy saying the line,
Mhm.
you know? And I was embarrassed for this other guy. God knows someday I'll meet him and I'll say like, hey,
Hmm.
maybe he's heard me talk about this in interviews. And no disrespect to him, but that, you just don't do that, no matter how driven you are. But it kept me from interacting with him. Because I didn't want to be another person taking up Alan Rickman's time. Hey, I'm a big fan of yours. What do you do? What do you like? And he might think that I've got a screenplay to pitch too.
Or
And
you want a selfie or anything like that then too.
oh yeah, and nobody had cell phones, so there was no selfies.
That's cool.
Yeah, I wish I could go back over time and get selfies with some of the amazing people that I've worked with. I do have pictures with Dana Carvey because there was a photographer on set,
Sure.
But yeah, Galaxy Quest was fun. I was disappointed when it first came out because it took a while to gain its cult audience, and now it's got so many fans, worldwide. But at the time, it was just like The Ringer. It was kind of an underperforming movie released during the holidays with some other blockbusters up against it. And both of those movies over time have really, really gained their own following.
Well, what's funny about it is the fact that Patrick, oh my God, Patrick Stewart. I tried to say Patrick Picard. My God, Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes, touted this film big time, and they're like, "You
Oh
have
yeah.
to see it." And that word of mouth from like the Star Trek Next Generation cast helped a big way. William Shatner got involved. He was like, "I have no idea who Tim Allen is basing his character on. I'm clueless on this." This kind of stuff on this that just gave it a life of its own. And much like in 1999, we also had Office Space, who went
Yeah.
nowhere at the time, and then just kind of grew this following, in the DVD era, essentially.
Mhm.
But yeah, I remember seeing it in theaters, and it was great. But it's like nobody even knew what was going on because you had the Matrix at that time. You had Sixth Sense at that time, the Mummy movies. That was all
Wow.
1999, so it got kind of swallowed up a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I also have to say I worked with Jonathan Frakes, who directed me in a pilot called Star Patrol
okay,
that I dropped on TikTok my segment from, where I played a giant slug. And so I was in all this slug makeup, talking like this evil guy.
not to be eaten.
And the fun thing about Jonathan Frakes is he directs as if he is a starship captain. Because when he says action, it sounds like he's saying fire cannons or something like that. Because he's like, and action. He puts his whole self into it. And he was so great to work with too.
A lot of times actors turn directors are great that way because they know what
Oh,
they
yeah.
want. They've also been on the other side of the fence where you're doing 86 takes in a row, shut it down, do a different setup because they didn't like the first one after 3 hours, So I know he directed a lot of episodes of Picard, especially season 3. So I know the DP over there. So, Rob, do you have anything? I did have a couple more questions, but I'll give you a shot.
Well, I was gonna say, if you had one thing I usually like asking people is, what's something you would tell your past self if you had the chance?
Wow, if I told my past self something, if I had the chance, a couple things. One thing I would do is stop trying to please the people you're auditioning for. Just be yourself. Be what you think this needs to be, not what you think they need for it.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing I would say is save your money, and also keep a day job, keep earning, do something to keep. I've started an improv school, and I wish I would have started it years earlier. And I wish I wish it were something that were easier expanded, because the main product there is me, so I can't oversell my time, because I also need to be in the industry. But I would always say, even when you're actively acting and you got a movie coming out, find sources of income so that you'll have the money for the things that you need, like to afford a publicist, to get new headshots, to get a new reel edited, and all the things that you'll need as an actor.
Fair enough. Yeah.
That's pretty good advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny
And believe
because
in yourself. is
yeah,
the
well,
other
yeah.
one.
You know, but now with obviously after, 2020 and COVID, the audition process, not sure about your side, but on our side of the fence on the East Coast, it's all pretty much just digital. You record it in your basement, you send it out. If they want you, they'll call you. But
Yeah.
as a result, it's 40 or 50 or even 60 people auditioning when it used to be like, say, 10, because they
Yeah.
can just sit there on the couch and watch it all.
And they can look at people from other cities because more people are
Mm.
willing to travel and work as a local
True.
to shoot a movie.
Mm.
I'm submitting now stuff in New York
Hmm.
and Atlanta, even though I don't live there.
Yeah.
And yeah, all of my auditions, especially all my theatrical auditions. I've
Mhm.
had a few commercial auditions that were live and in person, but every film and television project I've auditioned for, and I've been fortunate to book. I booked work even during the pandemic, even when like Zoom was the only way you could audition, and self tapes were the only way you could audition. I was able to get Young Sheldon.
Mhm.
I did
The Dahmer Show.
Dahmer,
Yep.
Monster. That was they had the whole red zones and everything like that. And yeah, since then, every audition um, has been a self tape or a Zoom audition, and that's why there's so many people who are like, "Yeah, I don't know if I want to do Zoom improv," and I'm like, "Don't you want to get good on Zoom where they're
Mhm.
gonna see you in your auditions? They're not gonna see you in a room, so it doesn't matter if you're in a room with somebody when you're auditioning anymore."
But it's funny because I think people do, and you pointed on this a little bit. I think people try too much to fine tune to give,
Yeah,
again, it's about giving your style. It's not about giving what they want because everybody's trying to kiss up to them
yeah,
based on what they think they want. And sometimes the notices are like, we want this and nothing else. Sometimes they do that, you know.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in your case
And
right
then
now,
it's great to have a guideline like that because then you just focus on that.
sure, sure. And then just look at you and decide, okay, yeah, yes, no, no, whatever it's going to be. Um, in your case right now, if you have somebody who's going to be starting out, you talk about saving your money, you talked about that stuff. Is there anything else that you had in your mind to say, do this, not this?
Do this, not this. Mm.
Mhm.
This is a regret that I have, but I'm not sure if it's really a regret. I do improv, and so I spent so much of my time showcasing myself doing improv shows. And, I made great connections from those improv shows. My first job ever, Dana Carvey show, came because I was at Second City.
Mhm.
And then there were other projects. I shot a pilot for an improvised sitcom years ago. Melissa McCarthy and some of the other
Mhm.
wonderful people were in the pilot. Didn't get picked up, but that was because I was out there doing improv. But sometimes I wonder if I was out there doing more plays,
Mhm.
or if I would have just said, like I came out to LA with a little bit of an ego because I had already done the Dana Carvey show. So
Mhm.
I was like, well, I don't need to do classes here and there, or I'm not going to do this low budget film. I think if I think I would say, like, never get too big for your britches. Accept work that's coming from you and say yes, thank you, and more, please.
Hmm. Nice. Nice.
Do it. Get out there and stay active
Mhm.
rather than resting on your laurels.
Fair enough. Always act like you're starting out in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are times where you need to take stock in yourself and
Hmm.
say you set your own boundaries, and
Mhm.
whatever boundaries you set are good, but you
Yeah.
should have some boundaries. You should say, I will do this, but I won't do that.
Nice. Nice. We're gonna have to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. Rob, do you have any more questions before I pick up a couple of questions with him? Go ahead.
I was going to ask one last question. So we mentioned the Dahmer Show earlier. How the monster? It was called Monster. How
Yeah.
was it being in that show? Like, what was like the setup for you to get that role? I know you were in the 9th episode.
Yeah. Well, it was to get the role, it was just a self tape,
Okay.
and there was no callback. I was called straight to set. And as I remember, it was a very hot day in Glendale,
Hmm.
and we were shooting at some community center or something like that that had a big auditorium in it. Um, um, I We were all separated you know, until we were in the holding room right before we went out there to shoot. But we had, like, you know, masks and cones on, and it was a hot, you know, you have those old police officers' uniforms. They're very hot. So I just remember that day being very hot. The director, Jennifer Lynch, was,
Mhm.
you know, great. She didn't have a lot of direction for me. She was just like, you know, had a brief conversation, and then they shot me from so far away that a lot of people didn't recognize that I was in it, because there's only a snippet of me that's really a close up. The rest of it is from so far away that if you don't know me, you may not even know that that's me in the scene.
Mhm.
And some people would be like, "Oh man, I didn't like the way they cut that." I realized that it was the story that they were telling. The story that they were telling was the woman who was the real hero was being given this small award in a small room full of people, but these
Mhm.
guys who had missed the mark and had let him go on to, you know, commit these other crimes, where it was in this giant ballroom. So it was the perspective of that was so important, and I appreciated that.
Nice.
But I still wish more of my face would have been on screen for that.
It's up to the editors. You know how this stuff goes.
Absolutely.
And usually they get the angle. You're like, oh my God, I look terrible there. Any other final thoughts? And also, how can people get in touch with you?
People can get in touch with me on TikTok at Bill Chott. I'm also on Twitter at Bill Chott. They want to look me up on Facebook, Bill Chott, Chott. I decided long ago not to make it tricky. I thought for a while, though, I was going to make it easier, because I had a blog for a while that I just called mailman.blog. And I started that up around the time that I did the mailman on This Is Us, which is trending today on TikTok. Somebody forwarded and, you know, shot that scene from This Is Us and put that on TikTok this week. How did I get off on that tangent?
Instagram, social media, really. So
you were saying your blog. That's
yeah. So anywhere you look, anywhere you want to look, TikTok, Threads, Twitter, or X it's called now.
It's Twitter.
Yeah, at Bill Chott.
Nice. And yeah, CHO, 2 T's on that. So
yes.
All right, Mr. Chott.
And then,
go ahead, please. I'm sorry, guys.
I was going to say, and do you want to advertise your improv classes at all?
Yeah.
You mentioned that.
Yeah, we offer improv classes both in person here in Los Angeles, out in Pasadena, and hopefully we're going to be starting again here in the San Fernando Valley. We also offer classes online. So if people want to take classes online and learn how to master Zoom, the way all actors need to master Zoom,
yes,
they can go to the link in my bio and let me know they're interested in online classes or in-person classes.
Perfect. And I'll throw the link down at the bottom too. I'll make sure, you know, in all this, I'll make sure I do as much as I can there.
Also, one more
Please.
Thing to pitch out there. I'm going to be in a play called Pure Cinema that's showing in the Hollywood Fringe, and I'm playing Alfred Hitchcock.
Nice. I can see it. Yeah.
Thank
my
you,
God.
Boy.
Oh my God.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Wow. I had to take a screenshot of that right there just to show that, because my God, you really, there, hang on. Stay put. There, love it.
Thank you.
So I have no idea. Basically, the recording just showed my screen get dark for a split second, but I'm okay with that.
Sure, it happened.
Yeah, but
that was great. It's like the Superman. You know, everybody thinks you're Clark Kent, and then you take off the glasses, and you're a whole different person.
Yeah, how stupid is Metropolis, by the way? Just saying. But all right, Mr. Chott, I appreciate the time. I'd love to do this again if you're willing.
Absolutely.
I'm going to also drop a message to James Balsamo after this to let him know.
You should tell him I said hi,
because he helped me interview one of the bassist for Danzig, Steve Zink.
Okay.
So because he's a big Danzig fan and everything like that, and I've known him for a while and Facebook friends with him. So that's really kind of funny to me that you're just like, I was in this movie called Robot Dracula. It's like, yeah, I know this guy.
Yeah.
So love it. But Mr. Chott, I appreciate the time. Thank you a bunch. And yeah, if you got any questions, let me know. And appreciate the time. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
We'll make sure to send you the link once it goes on the YouTube channel.
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Be good.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye.